Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to discuss today. I'm going to remind everybody that this is a podcast where we discuss current events and we discuss things in Illinois because that's where I live. And we interview bands sometimes. I'm going to get back to that hopefully soon, but there's just so much that is going on, as I'm sure you guys are all aware. So we just kind of need to talk about these things, or else it's just, well, it's all pointless, isn't it? As if you aren't talking about these things, and if you care about it at the end of the day, then you should. You should discuss the things that you care about. And, ladies and gentlemen, this is another episode of the Chug Life podcast. I am Michael Vega, your host, and we are discussing today the war in Iran. And of course, there is so many effects, just so many different problems that are starting to ooze out of this war. And the ripple effect from this has been brutal. And particularly in the U.S., it is being felt. There is a huge sense of disgust and I'd say probably horror as well as to some of the things that we're seeing. And the extent that the government currently is willing to go to distract from the Epstein files and pull away the entire world from focusing on these powerful people. And so today we are going to be seeing what the U.S. is currently doing, and we're going to dive into one of the main causes of this war as well. But I just can't say enough that this is disgusting, truly. And a lot of the images you're going to see are not meant to glorify any of this. They are not meant to urge anybody to consider any of this, but mostly it is to ensure that we do not look away. As I've said time and time again, I believe it is one of our main tenets as human beings to witness the punishments that are exacted on others by bullies and by all of these people that think that they have more power over you because of money or status or family or name. So, with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it, and let's look at what is going on right now in Iran. And this is reported from this morning, so the 11th of March. It is reported that we used this weapon. I may be wrong on the date. Maybe not, doesn't really matter. We are going to be watching the largest bomb that the U.S. has available explode in Iran. And you are watching from a neighborhood. And I just kind of want you to put yourself in these footsteps. Just imagine for a second that this is you on your porch and you came out to enjoy your coffee, or maybe you heard the initial explosion and came out to see what happened. And this is what you're faced with. So there's a lot here to dive into, and I can't really specify the damage that could be done to civilians in these areas, but I just couldn't imagine the horror of coming outside to this. And, you know, there's so many folks that think that there's a difference in who you are and what country you were born in. And they want to use that as a cudgel and as an excuse to think this is okay. And the reason why, and we've probably not focused as much on the reason why here, but I will state that if you decide to attack a country that you are negotiating with and essentially do what Japan did to us in World War II, I can't really fathom any part of my mind where I go, yeah, that's okay. That's the right thing to do. And the reason why is because during the previous treaties and during the previous understandings had, there was full access to the nuclear program. There was a full understanding within the Iranian government that this line should not be crossed. And for those that are unaware, the line there is nuclear weapons, because that's what everybody is focused on. And I just could not imagine that they've spent the last 20-something years, going on 30 even, and if you want to take them literally, even 47 years since these guys came to power. And it just, I'm not defending or saying that I'm a fan of the Islamic Republic. Absolutely not. It's horrifying what they did to their people, honestly, and I'm glad to see them gone. But I am just, I can't be proud of this, man. I like to think myself as the most red, white, and blue motherfucking blooded guy out there, but it's just, I can't even think about that watching this stuff, So, the reason we're watching this stuff isn't just to watch cool stuff happen or whatever, but to have these discussions. I think that these discussions are most important. And I hope that you could take that at face value and understand that this could happen here. And now that we are at war with a country that is lobbing ballistic missiles everywhere and getting help from China and Russia and using that to fuel their military industry, I can't help but wonder, what are the chances they can do it? And honestly, there's no chance, truly. I couldn't imagine a way that they could do it without China or Russia. But I think that our satellites and all of those kind of things would pick this kind of movement up. A boat heading out of Iran, or even a submarine, considering we've already sunk those and apparently the whole Navy's gone. I don't think it's possible, in my opinion. Their drones may have a couple thousand miles reach, but they wouldn't make it. So they would have to get a boat, take it out, go through the Atlantic, or even around. Uh, but you're not getting this through the Suez. It's not happening. You're not. I mean, even the thought of something leaving the Strait of Hormuz itself and not being seen is kind of crazy. So they could, in some cases, traffic it through neighboring countries. Um, that is something that you can think of, but it's not really something that is possible because of the amount of ground movement in those countries. So you're talking about countries like Iraq that is experiencing a pretty solid movement of troops, and they're getting attacked and all this kind of stuff, and they're trying to get themselves not mobilized, but they're trying to get, I would assume, some control of their borders. So I don't know how it works clearly. I'm just bullshitting here, guys, but segueing to this video here of Israeli troops getting ambushed. And this is another one of those things that makes you think about whether all of this is really worth it, you know? And so if you haven't watched or aren't watching, I guess, this is 3 Israeli troops moving through a bunch of rubble, and everything everywhere is bombed out. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, there's structures, yeah, but there's life isn't there. It's all just been destroyed. And I'm sorry to speak like that about so flippantly, but it feels like a movie. It's horrific to look at this, honestly. So this machine gunner is on the left hand side here, and he just opens up, and the first guy immediately goes down. The second guy lasts a few seconds, and the third guy is also killed within the first, because he turns around and starts running, and he gets shot in the back past the second guy, and it's an absolute slaughter, to think about so many people dying like this, and to just multiply this in Gaza and multiply this in Palestine as a general. This is a microcosm of what the Israelis did in Gaza, and it's horrific. They didn't have ambushes like this, I would think, but um, it's just horrific to even imagine, and in some cases we can see it with video and stuff like that, but a lot of the stuff that happens, of course, isn't caught on film, so it's just to imagine that is horrific. So gonna move on here and also discuss. So in this war, there have been quite a few uh, on the Israeli side that have been publicly confirmed killed, and we have our first confirmations of Israeli deaths amongst the government. And we are looking at the commander of the Air Force, the chief of general staff, the head of intelligence, the head of Mossad, and Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir. And this guy is a particularly hateful person. He has been seen and on video flippantly kicking Palestinians out of their houses and mocking them. and just being an absolutely disgusting person to them. And as well, when the flotillas from Greta Thunberg arrived, he was the one seen on film berating all of them and being just the most disgusting person you could be. These other guys here are amongst the most powerful people in their positions, or I mean, truly the heads. Let's be honest here. I did say head for a few of them. um it's I'm gonna say this is a huge loss, and quite frankly, following this, there were a lot of reports that Netanyahu himself had been killed, and it forced him to be in public for one of the rare times of this war. So there's a lot going on here. And in order to understand what the intensity of this war is looking like from a ballistic perspective, and rockets and all of these aerial projectiles, drones, and it's just nonstop in some cases. Uh, I'm gonna try and paint a picture quickly before I show you this, but I want you to imagine millions of lights in the sky. All right, you've got beautiful, just beautiful stars, and there are some that are moving. And in a lot of these cases, they just basically try and collide with each other. That's kind of what these things look like. Of course, I'm exaggerating a lot here, guys. Just give me a fucking break. But yeah, let's go ahead and check this out. So that is what anti-ballistic missile and ballistic missiles colliding look like. It is an incredible sight to behold, in all honesty, but the more I think about it, it's quite terrifying, because these would be nuclear delivery payloads possible. Um, it's terrifying, but these interceptions, you can sometimes have 8 interceptors go against one ballistic missile and fail. Just think about that. And that's from ones we've seen confirmed on camera. It's just crazy. So to imagine these with nukes is absolutely terrifying. Honestly, I I weep for the day, truly. So for those that aren't able to watch, I do, I guess, feel a little bad for you, because that was really awesome. We got to watch a bunch of stars fall down from the sky and smack into Israel. And I can't say that there is a part of me that feels bad, because this is what we get. I mean, you start a war, it's bound to happen. And if you are aggressive with your neighbors, and you are essentially a terrorist state, or are a terrorist state now, because the U.S. has bombed a girls' school, and it double tapped it as well with, I believe they were cruise missiles, they were Tomahawks. It's just horrifying stuff, guys. I mean, in some reports, I've seen a body count of almost 500. But I would assume, and this is typically the math for these kind of reports, where it was a mass casualty event. Absolutely. Because of the fact that it was a packed school in the middle of the school day. And on top of that, you hit when the first responders showed up. Because the reports that I've seen indicate that this missile essentially became a loitering munition, which means that it hung out in the sky watching and sending that stuff back. And somebody said, attack it again. And it did. And it killed many. It was a massacre. We are committing massacres. This is a stain on the United States, the likes of Miley or Melee. It is terrifying to consider that we are going back to tactics similar used like in Vietnam. And it's even more terrifying to think that the guys at the helm are pedophiles. And on top of that, are alleged to have committed heinous crimes against children, to have committed murder. And this is what you get when you elect a fraud, a con man. This is what the U.S. deserves. I mean, they elected him. I didn't vote for the fuck, so hey, leave me out of this shit. Doesn't mean I won't fucking fight. By fighting, sharing information, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know. That is one of the mean ways to disrupt. Even in some cases, the best way. So, to move on from here, I wanted to discuss some numbers. What has this cost us? How much are we losing? Well, this thing costs us, in some reports, $3 million or $3 billion a day. And in other reports, I've seen $1 billion a day. Now, it is reported that the military is out of funding, or going to be out of funding, and requesting another $50 billion. So, what does this tell us? The Iranians aren't done. They're fighting back. Hezbollah is back from the dead, apparently. And you have resistance still within Palestine. Does this sound like we're winning? No, it does not. So, the Iranians have lost a lot. And the U.S. has put out a huge statement saying that they've destroyed 6,000 things. That's how we're counting here. Because they're back to Vietnam tactics. They're back to counting things as a way to show, hey, it's working, we're winning. But these are things. I don't see any casualty counts. I don't see any reports of Iran losing so many soldiers that the IRGC is done. Sure, I see some videos of guys surrendering at their launchers. Okay, that's. I mean, if you want to call that winning, look, man, the government is kicking. All right, it's kicking hard. We've got the radicals in there now. We killed all the fucking nice guys, apparently. Now all the nut jobs are in government. It's not just like lower government, they're in power. Like, we killed all the rational people. And folks thought that those guys were insane. Folks thought those guys were the devil. But we killed them, and now what? So, it's not just the fact that we are losing numbers wise, in my opinion. Because you can destroy all of this shit, but if you're not telling us how many people you've killed, in my opinion, what the fuck does it matter? Because let's be honest here. Destroying things isn't going to do anything within morale structures as much as casualty counts. So if you're really trying to have an effect, like they say that they want to change the government and choose their guy, it doesn't make sense. Like, it just feels like they're doing shit off the cuff, and it's costing a lot for us for no reason, in my opinion. So, of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is just, in my opinion, just my podcast shit. So, as you know, we're going to roll this along, as I always do, and roll this into what is the pain here that I'm discussing, right? What is this costing us? You keep probably going, well, what is it? Well, that is gas. That is the literal fuel for everybody, okay? That is oil. That is the fact that you will have oil at such a price that it will shatter the entire economy. And we're discussing not just oil as a basic thing, right? Because there's multiple facets of oil. So there are so many ripples here that it goes into not just oil itself, but it affects more deeper aspects of the economy. If oil increases, there are a huge number of windfalls in all other industries as well. So it is horrific. And what we're discussing here, on top of that, is the oil price itself, right? So we're discussing stocks, we're discussing futures, we're discussing options, all of those horrible things, if I'm being honest with you. It's not fun, okay? I wouldn't recommend it to anybody unless you know what the fuck you're doing. And if you know what the fuck you're doing, you should be buying oil stocks right now, okay? And if you are smarter than me, you would get into options, okay? But we don't do stocks here, so we're not discussing that. We are discussing the effects, as well as we are discussing what is the outcome here and who wants this, okay? So, first off, the Iranians have stated they want $250 barrel. They want to have this massive effect on the oil by driving it up. And this is going to benefit Russia as well. This is a huge windfall for Russia. And I can't state this enough, but this is probably the singular best benefit of anything that has happened in the last few years for Russia. This is probably the best thing that could ever happen to them right now. They need money, they are strapped for it, and this is going to solve so many issues. Now, what are the other problems here? Okay, so if oil rises, you have an increase in gas prices, as I said, but that also affects us individually, you. So, by gas prices being higher, that is less money in your pocket because you will need gas. You will need to drive places. And in some cases, you will have to figure out a fine line. If you are already on the red line, just barely making it, it is going to be incredibly difficult to be able to afford those higher gas prices. And it is just going to tear away at your wallet. And that is the most horrific outcome here in my honest opinion, because that degradation of lifestyle will just completely drag the US into a further recession. In my opinion, we are in a recession. All of these metrics are being suppressed by the government to distract, mostly distract from Epstein, in my opinion. Okay, you want to use all of this horrible shit like the war to distract from even the most horrific shit like you not being able to find a job, because the US job economy is fucked. All right, just horrifically fucked. So, and I don't even need to source that shit, bro. Like, I'm gonna be honest. I don't source shit here because I don't need to source shit here. Okay, it's fucking facts. So, what does this mean for the government? If the government is facing issues within oil, within gas prices, they can release strategic petroleum reserves. Now, Trump has already said he's going to release it a little bit, but how does that affect stuff? It is a means for the government to be able to manipulate the stock market and to be able to come out and say, hey, we are going to get prices. Just figure it out. We got it. You know, we're going to do this thing. And everybody's going to just, okay, all right, great. And then move on to the next thing, which is, again, whatever horrific thing we're doing in the war. So there is a flip-flop ability here within the government to be able to just distract everybody from that horrific thing we did yesterday. And, ignore that because another atrocity just happened. Forget about that. And that is the scale I am discussing here when it comes to this war. There is massive ramifications within all of this. So, what is the, I guess, cost for us? Endless. It's not just trillions upon trillions. I mean, I'm talking about effects on the American people that are not able to even be quantified, because there's not even a way to track it truly anymore. These guys have done away with all of that. So we've lost probably, in the Iranians report, they've stated thousands, but the American government is saying 8. And as we know from reports from CBS, there was a mass casualty in Kuwait. We're talking about 30 plus people hospitalized, and we don't even know who died. That is what the government is willing to do to just cover this all up. They want to distract from Epstein. So they're going to war. So, in this oil sector world, in the oil world, Qatar Energy is basically, you know what? I think there's a bigger picture here to kind of discuss. It is not just within the Qataris. It is, man, it's Iraq. It is the Kuwaiti oil fields. It is the Bahrain oil fields. It is the United Arab Emirates oil fields. The Saudis, Qatar, and it is not even close to being over. The Iraqis went from 4.3 million barrels per day to 1.3. 70% decline. It's incredible. We're like maybe 2 weeks into this thing, or if that, yeah. It is fucked up, guys. Seriously, fucked up. And right now, there's no end in sight. And I can't stress enough that there is a lot that could be done. And it could get worse. And it probably will get worse. As the Iranians plan to mine the Strait of Hormuz, and as we continue bombing indiscriminately across the region. And I can't stress enough how fucked it is. I mean, it's truly just insane. But I'm rambling here. So, thank you guys for checking it out, checking us out. If you like what you hear, give us a follow, give us a like, go ahead and comment. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.